One time, one of my 10th graders approached me after class and said, "Mr. Milky, I need to talk to you about something." Now, that phrase can always be dicey because you never know what students are going to say. But she went on to say something that really surprised me. She said, "Mr. Milky, you cannot call on me in class." Now, what was particularly surprising is that I had called on her in class just moments ago. And so I was like, well, I kind of can. But what she said after I called on her was super insightful. It was a great response that helped contribute to the learning. So I was a little put off. She was successful. She shared a great idea. But she went on to explain, she said, "I have so much anxiety. And so like I panicked and I freaked out and I felt that throughout the rest of the lesson. Now this presents a conundrum. We need students to share. We value their participation. We need them to get comfort in sharing. We don't want students who cannot be asked to share thoughts, to contribute ideas, or they're going to be hamstrung for the rest of their careers and lives. But at the same time, we have to build psychological safety so students don't feel that panic moment, that freak out, that emotional hijacking of being randomly called on. This was my learning, is that I had done a classic cold call. I called on a student who I thought would provide some insights. I didn't think much of it. And since that conversation, I've really tried to reframe, like, how do I, yes, get students to share and to push themselves and participate, but do so in a way that builds psychological safety, trust, that builds that idea that I can and should share. In this video, we're going to be exploring what are some of the strategies to still hold students accountable to share, but do it in a way that builds psychological safety and confidence. I'm Chase, helping you build the effectiveness of learning through the affectiveness of teaching. Welcome to Effective Teaching in Action. All right, so students need to share. They often don't like to share. Now, in my last video, we talked about 3 of those major reasons that social sharing and participation needs to be normalized, legitimized, and democratized. But in this video, I want to share more of like tangible strategies, because learning, like objects, has some laws of motion. If we go back to Newton's first law of motion, we know that objects at rest tend to stay in rest, and objects in motion tend to stay in motion unless outside forces act upon them. And learning is the same way. Students tend to rest and not participate unless they are encouraged to participate. But once we get students over that inertia of participation, we often find that they become more comfortable, they realize that it's psychologically safe, and we get more of the feedback, the insights that we need to help students learn. So let's talk about 10 ways to preheat that oven to get students over the initial inertia of sharing so they become normalized and legitimized in their shares. Now, the classic one is to use a pair share, a turn and talk, to do a lukewarm call rather than a cold call. Before you ask for students to raise their hand or share an idea, you have them do a quick turn and talk, like 30 seconds, come up with an answer with someone nearby you, or at your table, have a quick 10-second conversation. What do you think the answer is? Now, I'll add an additional strategy here, is that this oftentimes tends to benefit the extroverted students who like to share and process out loud. Not every student processes in that same way. So don't be afraid to implement a right pair share, where students do a quick written response. This could look like, look at the person paper next to you, share an idea. Could look like rotating the paper along, that it doesn't always have to be heavily verbalized out loud first. We can use a right pair share instead. Another little maneuver I've learned is to have students first just acknowledge whether they've come up with an answer. So what this sounds like is, just give me a quick thumbs up if you have an idea for question number 5. Okay, keep your thumb up if you'd be willing to share. Or raise your hand if you remember one thing we talked about yesterday. Keep your hand up if you'd be willing to share. What we've done is we've given that initial motion, and it's going to take some effort for them to drop their hands. Now, of course, some kids are going to drop their hands, but we at least now have a visual that, okay, students have something to share, whether I call on them or not. Another strategy I talked about in my last video is the one-word whip, where you whip around the room and have students share just one word related to a concept, or that they recall, or that they predict. Every student shares that word, and then you can pull out outliers and you can look at some trends. You can even have students say, like, okay, what was the one that stood out to you? Next strategy is a little phrasing. Oftentimes teachers will say things like, who has a question? Does anyone have a question? Flip that to a phrasing of, I need a question before we move on. Before we move on to our next section, I need one question from the room. We're going to hold on until someone shares a question that's on their mind or that you think might be on someone else's mind. Now that phrasing sets a standard of we are going to ask questions in this class, but it also gives students some of that psychological safety of they can just offer up a question they think other people might have, even if it's not their question, or they could even package it like other people might be wondering, even if they're the ones wondering it. Next strategy is to select tag teams rather than individuals. So we're going to do tag team response. Avery, you're going to go first. Jackson, you're going to be second in following up. So if you want to add on to anything Avery says, that'll be your opportunity. So now Avery knows that even if she doesn't share something that's 100% accurate, she's not alone. She has a tag team who can help support her. This is also easy to implement if students have already done a pair share. They're already in these little tag teams. And so you might phrase it as like, hey, can you share what you heard from your partner? Or would one of you be willing to share what you came up with? You can even add in a quick little game. Hey, rock, paper, scissors. Whoever wins gets to just stay put. Whoever is unsuccessful, you're going to share what you two talked about. Another strategy is we can give a pre-choice before calling on students. So what it might look like is we give this statement and then we say, hey, I'm going to be asking whether you agree or disagree. Have a quick turn and talk with the person next to you. Those are your two options, agree or disagree. And then we'll elaborate on why. Or we have three potential answers up here, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. You're going to pick one of those three options that you think is most accurate. Have a quick conversation, then we'll come and turn to you. We have reduced the amount of potential responses so that students have comfort within a small select area. Another quick, easy phrasing to build inertia is to count off the total number of shares before anyone shares. So that sounds like we're going to hear from 4 people in class on this topic. So let's number off and hear those 4. And then you select, okay, you're going to be number 1, you're going to be number 2, you're not number 3, you're going to be number 4. And then you remember the order so that students have a little bit of that inertia. They know we're going to be hearing from multiple individuals, and that gets more participation from just one question. Another strategy is the thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs up, thumbs sideways consult, where we share an idea and we ask students like, hey, give a thumbs up if you agree with this, thumbs middle if you had a different thought. Everyone shows they have done a little motion. And then you can say, let's hear from someone with a thumbs up, or let's hear from someone with a thumb sideways. You could even do this as a follow-up. You could say, hey, Adrielle says blank. Give a thumbs up if you also had a similar thought. Give a thumbs middle if you had a different thought. And then we can we can elaborate on who did a thumbs up, who agreed, thumbs middle, who had some differing thought. Every student is participation. The stakes are super low because it's a very minimal bit of participation, but we're building that inertia. So those are just a handful of the strategies that we can use to overcome the inertia of participation, to preheat the learning oven. I would love to hear from some of you. What are your favorite strategies to get over that initial hump of sharing, to get students comfortable, normalized, legitimized, democratized in participation in class? Because psychological safety doesn't happen by accident. It is intentional. It is proactive on the parts of teachers. So share your thoughts. And as always, if you found this content valuable, like, subscribe, share it with your network. The people could also value or benefit from these strategies. And lastly, experiment this next week. Next lesson, try one of the strategies you heard, add it to your tool set, because the effectiveness of learning hinges on the effectiveness of teaching. I'll see you next week.